Do I look like a witch? That's what I was going for, you know, Salem vibe. Ooh. I'm a woman. Maybe I could be like a hex girl. Like in Scooby-Doo.
I'm a hex girl, and I'm gonna put a spell on you.
And the Hex Girls were featured in that Salem episode. It's all coming full circle. Do you like the outfit? Yes? No? If you don't like it, I'm gonna be wearing it for the rest of the video. So just close your eyes. This is now a podcast, maybe a little ASMR bit. So you're welcome. Hi everybody. For those of you who don't know me or recognize my face, I'm Mary Newton. I graduated from Granger in 2019, which when you're watching this will have almost been 2 years, which is insane. All the people in this production that you're in who know me are upperclassmen, or they're Timson, Fuller, and Hunt, I guess. Hi guys! They could also be my little brother Jonah. Everybody say hi to Jonah right now because I'm sure that's exactly what he wants to happen. That's right.
No.
Now, come on. Say hi to Jonah. Let him know you care. Let him know you care.
Stop.
So I'm a theater arts major at Utah State University, but right now, as in right now when you're watching this, I am going to be in Guatemala or in a reassigned location, depending on what COVID does. But Timson reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to do dramaturgy for the Crucible, and I said, yes, I do. Because I did dramaturgy for a production of the Crucible at USU, but also because I wanted to help you guys, because I'm so nice, so you're welcome. So we're going to be talking about history today as it relates to Arthur Miller's The Crucible. You might be interested to know that The Crucible isn't a historically accurate play, and Arthur Miller wasn't going for that either. A mistake we commonly make with historical fiction is thinking that because history is involved, the purpose of making it is to be like a textbook. The purpose of historical fiction is really to draw comparisons between life then versus life now. You see this in anything from Hamilton to The Sound of Music to Downton Abbey. You're seeing human life in a different context, in a way to shape the way that you view human life now. But when we're starting our own production of The Crucible, it's important for us to understand the actual story, the actual history of what happened in Salem in order for us to know the story that we're trying to tell now in 2021. Speaking of context, what does Crucible mean? I ask this because when I first studied The Crucible in Ms. Green's Honors English class, I was sitting around a cute little junior and I thought to myself, so I'm smart because I took Latin in high school, and I know that crux is a root that means middle. So Crucible has to do with the middle, I guess? But it also kind of sounds like crucifix. So Jesus? Middle or Jesus? Jesus is the middle, something like that. You will be surprised to find out that I was pretty off base. Originally, a crucible was a vessel of a very refractory material, such as porcelain, used for melting and calcining a substance that requires a high degree of heat. So putting this in context, it's basically used for working metal. The crucible is the container that you put the metal you're melting in before you, I guess, pour it out to make your sword or your horseshoes or whatever. I'm not a blacksmith, my job is normally to sit inside and read. After this original definition, crucible went on to mean two other things, mainly a severe test and a place or situation in which concentrated forces interact to cause or influence change or development. Now that we know what the title means, what leads Salem to even being around in the first place? It's the 16th century, and people are crazy about colonizing. Christopher Columbus was trying to go to India, he got lost, and then he created the biggest craze of the time along the way. So we got Spain, we got Portugal, we got Italy. Everybody in Europe is going crazy saying, hey, I'm gonna hit it up in the Americas and I am gonna get bank, make that coin. And England's sitting over here like, oh, I wanna be able to make money off of the land, I wanna be able to have ports and natural resources of my own and build my empire. But what's interesting about England is it has these colonies that are sort of like the other countries. It has Jamestown, you know, where people who are moving there are trying to cultivate tobacco, trying to make money. But what's different is England's trying to actually settle in the Americas, make colonies a home. And something else that's important is it has religion backing it. So religion was life for people in the 1600s. It was their entertainment, it was their social life, it was their entire way of being. Like Noah, centimeter, centipede, cinnamon roll wasn't born yet, so they couldn't spend their time watching his Great Value brand Netflix movies. And also, TikTok wasn't there to be shut down. Do we still have TikTok in the future? I don't know. This joke probably isn't gonna pay off. I need to clear something up for you because people use Pilgrims and Puritans interchangeably. They are not interchangeable. They are two different words, two different people, two different meanings. So the Massachusetts Bay Colony, where Salem resides, has Puritans, all right? And Pilgrims are more of the Plymouth Rock style person. What's the difference, you ask? Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked. Thank you for asking. Person right there. So in Britain at the time, there was the Church of England. And not surprisingly, if you weren't practicing as a member of the Church of England, you were committing a crime. It was illegal. You had to be a member of the Church of England if you lived in England. And a couple of people did not like this. And those people were the Pilgrims. They were like, we don't vibe with being in the Church of England. We want to do our own religion, kind of pull Martin Luther on this one. So could you let us please? And England was like, no, it's still illegal for you to not be a member of the Church of England. So they originally moved to like the Netherlands and other European countries, but they were like, oh, we want to be English, but without the Church of England. And if we live in other European countries, our kids are just going to be European. They're not going to be English. So they were like, oh, we'll move to America at an attempt of preserving our culture and our way of life. Smart. The Puritans were still members of the Church of England, but they just literally basically had an issue in how the schedule of the worship service went, basically. They were like, we want to do a Church of England remix. So this meant that socially and economically, they were different. Puritans were much better off financially, and Pilgrims were more like refugees. So when the Puritans were moving to America, they did it because they realized it was a pretty sound financial decision to be making. So they're making an investment, whereas the Pilgrims are just trying to stay alive. Since the Puritans are a religious group, it shouldn't be surprising that their communities are centered around religion, literally and figuratively. The chapel was always in the middle of Puritan towns, and Salem was no exception. Everything was built around their church. This also meant the government of Massachusetts was a theocracy, and it was run mainly out of fear. If you've heard of John Edwards and sermons like Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, the idea is that God just hates people, and if you're committing sin, and you already are, you're already doing terribly, God could kill you, and he will not hesitate to do so.
Rebecca, it's not what you think. I won't hesitate.
Witch.
This type of intense fear-mongering creates a culture of perfectionism. Men and women are expected to be attending church every week, regardless of their situation. And they're also expected to be following the laws, regularly reading their scriptures, doing what they're supposed to. Husbands and wives live under the traditional dichotomy that we expect. The husband's supposed to be the provider, making money, having a job. The wife stays at home, taking care of the house and the kids. Most of the text they read was religious. There wasn't really any like literature or books. And so besides listening to sermons being shouted at you, telling you that God hates you and he wants you dead, the only other thing you could do that was enjoyable was have marital heterosexual sex. Knowing that, it's especially awful being a kid during this time living in this community. Because uniformity is praised above all in Salem. So self-expression is out of the window. Kids aren't allowed to dance. They aren't allowed to have toys. They aren't allowed to speak unless they are spoken to. You're expected to be an adult without any of the rights of an adult. And you can imagine, especially as a young girl with a patriarchy on top of all of these expectations, when you're young, that you might feel a little bit strangled, stuck in the position that you're in. Salem isn't really just one city. Technically, that's how it's been marked, but almost two towns exist within it. There's Salem Town and Salem Village. Salem Town is like the main city where the church is, where the buildings are. That's where the more wealthy citizens reside. They have like their ports there, and they're just better off. Whereas Salem Village is the farming, rural area, and they're typically more poor. That's where John Proctor lives. Since I'm talking to people from West Valley, the best way I can explain it is culturally, Salem Town is east side West Valley, and Salem Village is west side West Valley. So in 1689, William and Mary, who were the King and Queen of England, by the way, they decide to go to war with France. And they also decide that they're going to be fighting each other on American soil because that's what European countries did at the time. The battles devastated places like upstate New York and Nova Scotia and Quebec. And what that meant is there were a ton of refugees from these cities who are now trickling down to places in Massachusetts like Salem. And their relocation puts a horrible strain on the resources of the town. And it also starts this rivalry between Salem Town people whose wealth was tied to the port more and trade, and those who still depended on agriculture in Salem Village. And people were also mad about Reverend Samuel Parris, who had gotten appointed as Salem Village's first ordained minister in 1689 at the same time that the war starts. The people felt like Reverend Parris was rigid and greedy, and they weren't off. All of these problems were leading to contention, but at the time the villagers were blaming this kind of contention on the devil because that's what their religion and literature and basically everything they built their life around would tell them that it was. Also, blaming the devil typically has the connotation that he has servants who are running amok, and those people are witches.
I'm a hex girl, and I'm gonna put a spell on you.
Fun fact, Salem is a derivative of the Hebrew word for peace.
Ironic.
In January of 1692, there are two girls, Betty Parris and Abigail Williams, and they start experiencing these convulsions. Another girl, Ann Putnam, is experiencing similar medical conditions, and at the time, the doctors had no answer for what was happening, what was going on. And so they just said, oh, well, if there's no natural explanation from this, there must be a supernatural explanation, which is witches. So all the adults ask the girls, who did this to you? How did this happen to you? Who is doing this against you? And the girls end up accusing these three low-profile women of being witches. Some toxologists have concluded that the girls, I've noticed that sometimes I say girl, kind of like the way that group from Despicable Me says girl. It's like girl.
Girls! Girls!
It's horrible. Some toxologists have concluded the girls' symptoms were a result of a fungus that was in the bread in Salem. Other people have speculated that the girls were actually taking names that the parents were suggesting, that they were trying to root out and get rid of their enemies. But for me, the most believable circumstance is that there was a mass hysteria that occurred, sort of like the Dancing Plague of 1518, where the mental state of the town just caused the people to believe these symptoms that they were having into existence. Whether or not Abigail and Betty and Anne were originally making them up, something psychologically just drove them to this temporary insanity. But for the Puritans, they really believed that there was a supernatural force behind all of this. So more and more girls started having episodes, and more girls began accusing people of attacking them. It started with people like the slave Tituba being accused, but slowly citizens of higher rank, mainly women, but also men, were being put under attack. Back in medieval times, I'm sure you remember that witches were typically burned at the stake, right? Or they were pushed off a cliff, or they tried to drown them. If you were able to avoid being killed, that meant that they were a witch. And if you died, oops, we were wrong, I guess. The people of Salem were set on being like these rational, more academic people. They were like, we're gonna treat this right. We're gonna be smart. And they decided that they were going to put these witches on trial to be hanged, because that's better. The trials were formatted with this expectation that the accused would admit to being witches. Like, they were definitely guilty, and we were just having this trial in order to get them to tell us. The girls' accusations just weren't questioned at all. They said it, and everybody believed them. These court sessions were often extremely one-sided, very antagonistic towards these accused women and men. Magistrates questioned Sarah Good's daughter, Dorothy, who was 4 years old at the time, and her answers were construed as a confession. They like asked her questions, like leading questions, to basically make her admit to being a witch, and she was 4, which is awesome and totally not ethically wrong at all. The questioning got even more serious when Deputy Governor Thomas Danforth and his assistants started attending these hearings. So on May 27th, 1692, Governor William Phips of Massachusetts Bay ordered the establishment of a special court of oyer, which is hearing, and terminer to decide. The first case brought to the special court was Bridget Bishop. She was this older lady, and she was basically known for 1, being a town gossip, and 2, getting around, which, by the way, was a bad thing at the time. Pretty common for people to be slut shamers in Salem. So when she was asked if she committed witchcraft, Bishop responded, "I am as innocent as the unborn child." Apparently this defense was not convincing at all to the court, because she was found guilty, and on June 10th, she became the first witch to be hung in Salem on Gallows Hill. 5 days later, a respected minister named Cotton Mather wrote a letter asking the court not to allow spectral evidence, which is basically a testimony based on dreams and visions, into the court. The court ignored this request, and 5 people were sentenced and hanged in July, 5 more in August, and 8 more in September. On October 3rd, following his son's footsteps, Increase Mather, who was the president of Harvard at the time, denounced the use of spectral evidence. And he said, "It were better that 10 suspected witnesses should escape than 1 innocent person be condemned." Governor Phips, both in response to Mather's request and in his own wife at the time being questioned, prohibited further arrests. He was said, enough is enough. And he released many accused and dissolved the court of oyer and terminer on October 29th. Phips replaced it with a superior court adjudicator, which disallowed spectral evidence, like both of the Mathers previously had said they should do, and only condemned 3 out of 56 defendants that were brought before them. Phips eventually pardoned all who were in prison on witchcraft charges by May 1693. So like a year later, 19 were hanged on Gallows Hill, and a 71-year-old man was pressed to death with heavy stones, and several people died in jail, and at the end, nearly 200 were accused of witchcraft. Following the trials and executions, many involved, like Judge Samuel Sewall, publicly confessed error and guilt. So on January 14th, 1697, the General Court ordered a day of fasting and soul-searching for the tragedy in Salem. So they literally pulled the old times equivalent of a Twitter thoughts and prayers moment. And in 1702, the court declared the trials unlawful. In 1711, the colony passed a bill restoring the rights and good names of those accused, and granted £600 restitution to their heirs. But it wasn't until 1957, which was more than 250 years later, that Massachusetts formally apologized for the events of 1692. It's just, people in the wrong are notoriously bad at apologizing. Like, can you imagine one of the Salem judges trying to film an apology video now? It has come to my attention that some of the accused previously in Salem the Essex County in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. They have been upset with my previous verdicts. As you can see, my home was in complete disarray. No part thanks to my wife, Felicity. Well, his work. I have for many months now been trying to find the right words to surmount the feelings that have been brought up through these troubling times. I have been praying. I have been reading my Bible. For many weeks, I have been consulting my wife's friends, husbands. I would never talk to my wife or her friends about any issue that we're facing. Women can't fix anything, am I right? Not even a good old bowl of mutton. People will understand what I'm talking about. And I have come to a conclusion that... Oh. Hello, ladies of Salem. You know, my husband John and I take part in daily scripture study every evening after he gets back home from the fields, and I've been busy doing all of my domestic work in the home where I belong. But lately I've been noticing that our family Bible has gotten ragged and worn. It's what happens from the love of God, but, you know, I believe, and I believe all of you out there do as well, that we all deserve a Bible that reflects the quality of our home, which is why I'm recommending the new Bible. It's the exact same Bible, but look how much better it looks. It contains all your favorite books, from Matthew to Mark to Luke to John. It even has Deuteronomy, personal favorite. So what are you waiting for? Run down to Salem City and buy yourself a brand new Bible. Don't you think that your man of God deserves his word of God to look at Sunday best? The new Bible. I'm just overflowing with emotion now. Oh, dear, what is this stain on my handkerchief? Felicity will have to clean that later, but I understand that I very well may have falsely accused many a villager from both Salem City and Salem Village, but may I remind you that there was, at the time, spectral evidence that was taken very seriously. Though we later decided that spectral evidence was simply easily discreditable. But I was working in the times that I was in, and I do not appreciate myself being judged for times that were different. One of the best things about the new Bible is how now nosy neighbors won't be judging you on this raggedy old thing, as some might call it. Yes, Goody Osborne, I am looking at you and thinking of your comments from last Sunday service. But who am I to judge my neighbor? The new Bible. In fact, does it not say in Matthew to love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you? Was that not I? Was I not doing the Lord's work by trying and hanging many an innocent man and woman in Salem? I think I was. But I suppose at this time, what we now must focus on are my sincerest apologies for possibly offending anyone, for the will of God as I saw it at the time. I will continue being a judge, and to be quite frank, nothing can bring back those poor souls. So, well, anyway, that's all I have to say on the matter. and I wish you a good day. What happened at Salem was the result of a lot of things, but mainly it was because the people were being run by their fear rather than reason. And that makes you wonder, what did Arthur Miller have to be afraid of? Which we're going to find out next time. Until then, I hope you have a great time rehearsing and learning, and I'll see you in the next video. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. Bitty butter, put some butter, but she said this butter's bitter. I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter. So bitty butter, put some butter, put it in her bitter batter to make her bitter batter better. It has come to my attention that part of my beard fell off. One moment. Woof. Okay. I think I'll have enough for my stupid joke.